Hey, what's going on YouTube? It's Pyromancer here, and welcome back to my channel. Now, for those of you that are regular viewers, I just want to let you know, you're already going to notice that I have my Chronicle volume sitting back here. I did add a secondary desk back here, and now I got my PC on there, so maybe we'll put some different props back there every once in a while and maybe mix things up. Well, I hope you're all having a wonderful day. Today, we're going to be talking about the apocalypse, the end of all things, otherwise known as the Hour of Twilight. Now, if you're not familiar, the Hour of Twilight is something that the old gods are trying to execute. And they went to such lengths to do so with Deathwing, with the Twilight Hammer cultists, with Cho'Gall. That was all part of the Hour of Twilight. And the Hour of Twilight is described in Chronicle Volume 3, actually, as the apocalyptic end of all things. Now, I want to go ahead and preface this by saying that the Hour of Twilight, while we've never actually seen it fully happen and fully commence, I do think that it is something we are going to see relatively soon. People have been asking me, Pyromancer, when do you think the Hour of Twilight's actually going to happen? And do you think it will happen? The answer is yes. I'm fairly certain that it's going to happen. And I'm pretty sure that it is going to happen in the Battle for Azeroth. Let me tell you why. The reason for the Hour of Twilight, from what I can tell, is to allow death to kind of take over. And the way that we know this is when you go back into the end time dungeons, back from Cataclysm into the Hour of Twilight, for example, there is actually a dragon, an alternate kind of ego, if you will, of Nozdormu, the bronze dragon aspect and the one in charge of actually watching over the one true timeline, as it were. Now, the interesting thing about Murozond, this alternate version of Nozdormu, is that Murozond foresaw what was actually going to happen in the Hour of Twilight and decided that that would actually be a better end. That would actually be more beneficial than what Aman'Thul had planned. And we know this specifically because Murozond kind of tells us. And when you kill Murozond in that dungeon, he actually says as he's dying, you know not what you have done, Aman'Thul, what I have seen. And so what I predict Murozond's issue is he foresaw the fate that was going to happen to Nozdormu should the true timeline continue to go on. Now that's really, really unsettling because the Hour of Twilight, like I said, the apocalyptic end of all things, seems like that would be about as bad as it could get, right? But when you actually go into this fragmented segment of time, as Nozdormu has you go in to defeat his alter ego Murozond, which is an anagram for Nozdormu, you can actually look around these dungeons and there are certain characters that are still present, like Bane Bloodhoof, Tyrande Whisperwind, Sylvanas Windrunner. These types of characters are still there, and even in all of this chaos, Deathwing himself is impaled on top of the Wormrest Temple in Dragonblight in Northrend. So it seems like something really, really horrible that's going to happen. But like I said, even this alternate Nozdormu, this alternate Murozond, was pretty sure that the Hour of Twilight is something that's going to be even better than what Aman'Thul would have done. Now, like I said, that's sketchy because Aman'Thul is a Titan, right? You would think the Titans have some type of plan. They have something great that's going to happen. But as I've been kind of speculating for a while, I think that Aman'Thul has tried to remove death from the equation in its naturality, right? I think they're trying to use re-origination as an alternative to legitimate death. Perhaps Aman'Thul has some type of obsession for ANR regardless. I think that with all this stuff coming up with the Prophet Zul, with the old god stuff that's already being shown in the first raid, Uldir, the second raid is going to be Queen Ashara, right? The third raid, God knows what. We already are kind of anticipating potentially getting N'Zoth in this expansion. We're already looking at potentially having some type of issue coming up with Bolvar 4 Dragon. And on that note, we're looking at Alexstrasza having been added to the Nexus, potentially losing Alexstrasza the Lifebinder, the Dragon Queen, leader of the Red Dragonflight. Now that would leave really only two aspects, because a lot of people have overlooked the fact that Ysera is not actually dead. She's not actually gone. She's much like a demon, where she's bound to the Emerald Dream, like a wild god will say. And if her physical form is destroyed, her spirit, especially after what we saw happen with Elune, in the Tear of Elune, went back into the dream. We also know this because, well, she helps us when we fight Xavius, and you can also see her spirit walking around in the dream prior to defeating Xavius. This leaves only one other aspect, of course, and that is Nozdormu. Now, Nozdormu believed at the time that when we defeated Murozond that the threat was eliminated, but only temporarily, and that at some point he would fall to madness. And I'm certainly thinking with all of the promise of the old god stuff that we're going to be having in the Battle for Azeroth, it's the prime time for Nozdormu to go mad. Why not? This would prime the return of the Infinite Dragonflight, with Murozond as their leader, trying to execute Order 66. No, trying to execute the Hour of Twilight. I have this weird feeling that some really, 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 really horribly bad shit is going to happen in Battle for Azeroth. Some things that I think that I'm going to talk about much more later on include Queen Ashara using the Tidestone to bring Najdatar up from the bottom of the ocean, just like the Cthulhu mythos about Cthulhu, the herald of all the other old gods, rising from the depths and bringing his city with him when he does. I think this would be incredibly well fitting for Ashara's storyline, and I think that we're going to learn a lot from that. But aside from that, I've also speculated that it's possible that Sylvanas and Helya, whether by intention of Sylvanas or not, end up bridging the Shadowlands, or the Realm of Shadows, directly to Azeroth. This would be absolutely insane. We also have the potential for a nightmare outbreak to once again get out of the World Trees, with Teldrassil being burned down. God knows what kind of implications that could have. So with this all being said, I want to touch on a couple things about the Hour of Twilight that I think is really interesting. It's mentioned in Chronicle Volume 3 that Cho'Gall believed at one point that the Horde was the key to bringing about the apocalypse. And this was something that left his mind after he saw Gul'dan's failures after bringing the Horde through from Draenor. But I think it's hilarious because I think the key to the apocalypse still does lie with the Horde. And I think there's a very important reason why Sylvanas has been made the war chief. As Vol'jin said, the Loa spirit's been talking to me, whispering the name, Windrunner. And that's how Sylvanas ended up becoming the war chief. She didn't even want to be the war chief. But the question therein lies, is Helya on the other side poking things? Is she on the other side pulling strings? Is there any chance that she has any type of involvement with the Loa? And even if she doesn't, the Loa are an interesting thing in themselves. We don't really know where the first Loa even came from. We don't know how it was created. All we know about Loa is that some of them are much like wild gods, but there are specifically troll spirit Loa, like Bwonsamdi, for example, and I think potentially Vol'jin, who have very close ties to the Shadowlands with death, specifically Bwonsamdi. And I have to ask myself, with how old the trolls are, who created the first Loa? It seems that there's some type of orchestration going on in the background. There are little strings being pulled here and there, shifts in power being motivated by something else that we're not aware of, and I definitely think that it is the old gods. One thing that I found very interesting is that at the end of the Stonecore dungeon in Cataclysm, you come across a Twilight Hammer cultist who is leading the Twilight's Hammer in the Stonecore, and she talks about how the world is going to be reborn in fire. The world will be reborn in flames, and I thought that this was wildly interesting because I compared it to what Loken, all the way back in Wrath of the Lich King, said about the escape of Yogg-Saron. He said, "My master has shown me the future. The world will be reborn in darkness. Yogg-Saron will be freed. The Pantheon will fall." But at the time of Wrath of the Lich King, two of those things had already happened. The Pantheon had already fallen, and Yogg-Saron had pretty much already broken out. He had already influenced throughout Ulduar and spread his corruption, spread the curse of flesh, all of those things. So the last thing would be for the world to be reborn in darkness. The interesting thing about this is how we've seen darkness defined before, because Sargeras, for example, is what? He's the Dark Titan. But when you look at Sargeras, man, he's not dark, is he? He's actually brilliant, radiating. He looks like a fucking sun, honestly, is what he looks like. chaotic fire, chaotic light or something. Definitely not Fel, though. I can promise you that. Fel is specifically green. Now, moving past that, I want to go back to the description of the Hour of Twilight from Chronicle Volume 3. Now, I know some of you like the fact that I pull from Chronicle. I know some of you hate the fact that I pull from Chronicle. And sometimes there are very, very unique things that I feel are hidden in the text. Now, again, the description of the Hour of Twilight is the apocalyptic end of all things. Page 123, Chronicle Volume 3, The Emergence of Cthulhu. While the Horde and Alliance were fighting to protect their lands, Cho'Gall and the Twilight's Hammer cult continued their work to usher in the Hour of Twilight, the apocalyptic end of all things. Now, I know that some of you are tired of hearing about him, but there is no way in my mind that they happen to reference this as the apocalyptic end of all things in the newest Warcraft book. And it just so happens that Argus the Unmaker, this mysterious titan that still is at no point mentioned in any of these 3 books, casts the end of all things during his fight. I want you guys to also know that I pay very close attention to Christy Golden in her tweets, and not long ago she shared this book where it's actually called The Death of All Things. And in this book, there's about 20 or 21, 22 different authors, Christy Golden included, who share a short story on kind of a way that they interpret death. And in Christy Golden's story, she talks about Lady Death. She relates Lady Death in some ways to the moon and the paleness of the moon. She also talks about how the elves in her story worship Lady Death as a goddess, right? Which I found to be very, very interesting. Now, we'll touch more on that later. But the thing about Argus the Unmaker is you have basically this Titan of Death. And I want you guys to know, we know for a fact he's the Titan of Death. It's not speculation. The reason we know this is literally in the game files for his attacks. It's all prefaced by Death Titan, insert spell name here, whatever it is. It's literally Death Titan. He has a scythe, he's the Reaper, he's the Unmaker, he casts End of all things. But even more so than that, in the mythic mode, after Aman'Thul blasts him with time, he starts casting Apocalypse modules. He shifts from re-origination to Apocalypse, pure end of things, just complete and utter obliteration of matter. Now, I don't know about you guys, but this is obviously very, very telling, especially given the fact that when we defeated Argus, he has dialogue where he says, "Free, free," right? Now, I don't know if this ever actually made it into the game. I definitely know it's on the Wowpedia page. I've been trying to look out for it to see if I could actually catch him saying it, and I do believe he says in the chat, "Free, free." It's also worth mentioning that if you play a Shadow Priest, that after you kill Argus, Xal'atath chuckles, as if she knows something, as if there was a great victory that went unnoticed. Other Hammers Here Now, right out of Ogmot's Dream Journal, other Hammers Here Now, they talk about Argus, about the one that got wakened, about the great victory that our enemy not even notice. Now, when we got to the seat of the Pantheon and we defeated Argus, what were we so fixated on, right? Vanquishing the Burning Legion, taking out Sargeras, and saving the Pantheon, right? We didn't even think about the implications of defeating the Titan which reigns over death. So, where did he go? What happened to him? The boy king serves at the master's table. 3 lies will he offer you. Ogmot says, 3 lies. The first one been told. Bound by that throne? No. Free. Free. Now, he's either talking about Argus or he's talking about Sargeras, but given that Argus has the free dialogue, I'm more inclined to believe that it's Argus, because even in strange aeons, death may die. Even death itself can be killed, and if something is genuinely, holistically, and truly killed, where do you think that it would go? Into the Shadowlands. And like I speculated before, I think Helya and Sylvanas might make some type of bridged connection between the two. The Hour of Twilight is not something that is going to happen super far down the road. It's already beginning. The end of all things is already starting to happen. It's already taking place around us. The red rift in the sky, which looks like a star, like I've mentioned before, symbolic of Nibiru, right? If you're not familiar, Nibiru is essentially Planet X, this planet that was prophesized to collide with the Earth and cause the apocalypse, kill literally everything. And while we can't always relate every external thing to something in the game, I definitely think that these signs of the apocalypse are very, very big hints. Let's not forget Vermathras' quote, "Pain awaits in the darkness, and as he dies, death claims us all. When he kills you, better that you died here where she cannot claim you." Obviously talking about Sylvanas there, but I thought it was funny when he said, "Pain awaits in the darkness. Death claims us all." And then when you get to Argus, when he kneels down in front of Aman'Thul, he says, "No hope, just pain, only pain," right? Now this begs the question then, what the fuck exactly is in Sargeras' sword? Because as I've brought up multiple times, it's the exact same texture as the mythic mode mechanics from Argus. This energy is flowing into the ground in Silithus. Sands soaked in pain, as Magni says. Rivers of blood. And we just recently got this data mined map, which I believe, or not map, it's a loading screen that I believe to be for Kizan in Battle for Azeroth, which you can see basically a river of azurite, rivers of blood. It's super interesting because you can go as far back as to Garrosh Hellscream in Mists of Pandaria. In the mythic phase, he pulls you into a false reality, a nightmare, if you will, and he says, "I have seen mountains of skulls and rivers of blood, and I will have my world." Yasharaj is apparently the one showing him this. Death sees all, and while some may believe that the old gods come from the void, I think we might just be completely misunderstanding the void in its entirety. What if the void is actually a deep, dark, the lowest, blackest layer of the Shadowlands? Something that has been locked away, festering deeply within there, outside of reality, trying to get in. I think that this relationship between light and death is something that light and void is something that we've very, very, very much so misunderstood. And I think that the Battle for Azeroth is going to show us a lot of this. So, in conclusion, to bring this all together, I think in Battle for Azeroth we are going to have the climax of the Hour of Twilight. What exactly this means, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, you guys, but it's going to be fucking wild, whatever it is. I think we're going to have the madness of Nozdormu in the return of Murozond. I think we're going to lose Alexstrasza. I think Sylvanas and Helya are going to do something absolutely insane, whether Sylvanas knows it or not. They have a deal still, and I am not one to believe that Helya, the Queen Valkyr, who was killed in her own realm, I'm not one to believe that she's actually gone forever. Specifically, given the fact that we've seen multitudes of characters who we previously thought were dead be brought back. And this lands one more question. If all these characters that we've had died, Tyrion Fordring, Arthas Menethil, Deathwing, all these characters, there has to be some place that you go in death, but why don't they come back? Well, if the realm of death is locked off and the things inside of it can't start a new cycle, begin as a new life, if that whole part of the equation, that slice of the pie has been cut out and thrown away, well, some really, really bad shit could be hiding in the Shadowlands that we had no idea was actually in there. But I'd love to know your guys' thoughts. I really just kind of rambled on this one, but I've been thinking about the Hour of Twilight a shitload lately. I know I'm all over the place with the different facts and different quotes and all this, but I'd really love to know what you guys think. Leave a comment in the comment section down below letting me know what you think is going to happen in the Hour of Twilight, what you think this entails, and whether you think Argus could actually tie into it given the description of the apocalyptic end of all things. I feel like it's right in our face and we're just really missing it. But hey, that's just one man's opinion. Drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it. If you guys don't know, I do have a Twitter, Twitch, and a Patreon page. I am going to be actually streaming tomorrow on Thursday as well, so I'd love if you guys would stop by and hang out. I love to do live lore discussion with you guys. It's always a lot of fun, and you guys seem to enjoy it too. Last thing I'll let you know is I do have a public Discord that you can come and join if you want to discuss any World of Warcraft lore, anything like that. You're always welcome to join, you guys. So With that, I will say thank you once again. Stay awesome. I love and appreciate you guys very much. And until next time, I will see you guys later. Peace.